Hello, our dear esteemed viewers. A very good afternoon to you all. Tonight, we are going to be making sense of the human organ donation and transplant law in Uganda, which was assented into law in the month of May 2023. It was introduced into Parliament as a bill in the year 2021, wherein we saw a number of discussions going on the floor of Parliament until the month of May, where it was assented into law by the President. Now, joining me to discuss tonight's topic, I'm joined again by a panel of very strong gentlemen, as one of our panelists used it last time. So I'm going to give each of them less than a minute to introduce themselves and then tell us how exactly you, the audience, should address them or how exactly they want to be known. I'll start from my extreme right. A gentleman that has also appeared on this show before, and we're very privileged and happy to have you tonight. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you very much, Drake. My name is Edison Masereka. I am a student at Busitema University. I'm pursuing a bachelor's in education, English language and literature in English, and I am the current guild speaker of Busitema University. You can simply call me Edison. Glad to be here.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Edison, the guild speaker of Busitema. So we are waiting to hear the English that will flow since you're actually pursuing literature in English and the student pursuing education. Thank you. We're privileged to have you tonight.
Thank you.
The gentleman next to Mr. Edison, please introduce yourself.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Edison. My name is David.
Drake.
Mr. Drake, sorry. You know I'm close to Edison. Yes, once again, my name is Okumu David Kadoketch. I'm a student at Makerere University. I'm studying Masters of Statistics at Makerere University, majoring biostatistics. I'm really humbled to be part of the session today, part of this impeaching discussion in the laws governing Uganda. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kadoketch. We're very happy to have you in tonight's conversation, and we're looking forward to having a wonderful deliberation with you on board. Thank you. Gentleman next to Mr. Kadoketch wearing a red tie.
I expected you to interpret that name, but it's okay.
Kadoketch means bitter salt, right?
Dear viewers, by legal identity, my name is Nasasira Emmanuel Kwizera, a lawyer by profession. I just completed my course from Islamic University in Uganda. I'm serving as the Deputy General Secretary, Genius Generation Agenda, and I served as the Guild Prime Minister in that aforementioned university, Islamic University in Uganda. Ndugu Douglas Drake and colleagues, I'm so happy to have a discussion with you tonight. The viewers, stay tuned and unleash and understand the laws about the topic that has been mentioned by the moderator. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I would later on in the discussion, I would like to understand why a red tie out of all colors today when we're discussing the issue to do with the human organs. But shall get to that. Gentleman next to Mr. Kwizera.
Good afternoon, dear viewers. My name is Abaho, and I'm a recent student of Makerere University, an economist majoring in development economics. Recently completed my studies, and I'm glad to join this panel of very strong men as we deliberate into this issue. Thank you very much, Mr. Onen.
All right, thank you very much, Arthur. As you have heard the gentlemen ably introduce themselves, you can see that the panel has men who are able to discuss, from their introductions, they are the right people to help us deliberate on this issue. So I'm extremely excited to start this conversation with them. So that said, let us go straight into the discussion. And without prejudice, I'm going to begin from my near right here, from Mr. Abaho, Arthur. Arthur, I believe you're quite aware of the genesis of this law that was assented into law in the month of May 2023. So I would like you to kindly just give us a brief history of the organ donation and transplantation law in Uganda, or generally the history that relates to organ donation and transplantation in Uganda.
Well, March 2023 saw this law being assented into. Was it the right time? No. From 2021 and the years before, we've seen various steps being taken in the development of the law. So it coming in March 2023 was not the perfect timing, because prior to 2023, we were still seeing cases of organ trafficking, human organ trafficking, coerced donations of the organs, where the vulnerable are actually being put onto platforms to actually give out these organs without their own will or without their own consent. So the timing is what I want to question when we are looking at this history, as we delve into the issues throughout our discussion. It coming even at a time when the law is passed and the bill has been assented into, but you realize that we're having a lot of other issues going on. That is when we also had the homosexuality bill being signed. So we did not receive the respect, the magnitude it deserved, and it is still being looked at as an issue that even the layman citizens do not understand. So I feel like the country needs time, the country needs a period of time where it sits down and analyzes that now this thing has passed into law. This human trafficking and human donation has passed into law, and a number of variations are taken into consideration for it to be effectively considered. Education, implementation, sensitization, you know, the longer it takes, the more sensitization should be carried out. But it's not what we've seen with this particular law, where even when it was being passed, we saw a lot of attention being carried out onto the homosexuality, the whole lesbian and gay issues being brought into context, neglecting this law. So I do not think citizens have actually understood the magnitude human trafficking, organ donation and organ trafficking carries until it actually happens to them. So we should not wait for that period to reach, but rather we should now have a moment of time where we do not look into the history where we come from to reach into the law, but where we actually now have a more sensitive implementation and a more sensitive investment into sensitization of the various masses into what can actually be done to have this law into place.
Arthur, you talk about magnitude. You talk about it's not the perfect timing. Now my second question is going to go to Mr. Kwizera. When you listen to Arthur's submission, he avoids the aspect of history and he says he doesn't want to delve into history because the questions relating to the magnitude of organ trafficking hasn't been answered. And for him, in his submission, it's not a perfect timing. But I just want us to first delve back in the year 1976 when Uganda saw its first kidney transplant that occurred. Yeah? And then later on, we see in the year 2000s when people did not have so much knowledge of human donation, of organ donation and transplant, among others, because of cultural or religious beliefs. But then fast forward, we see in the year 2010, the Uganda Organ Donation and Transplantation Program was established. Then later on, we see this bill being tabled in the year 2021, and now it is law. Now, from that, I want you to explore the possible challenges that have caused the delay of the passing of this law. Because from Arthur's submission, he says the magnitude wasn't given to this law, and for him, it wasn't the perfect timing. So assess the challenges that has led to the delay to the passing of this law.
Thank you very much, Ndugu Douglas. Forgetting the other name. Douglas Drake.
Mm-hmm.
We should appreciate the process of lawmaking.
Mm.
It is connoted from the first mentioning in the parliament, whether it is a private member's bill or a government bill. And in our mighty parliament, in the August House, there are sections like the plenary settings of making law. This bill has been assented this year in March. It was tabled as a government bill. Now it is law, it is an act. It was government bill tabled by the Minister of Health, Honorable Luther Chen. The challenge connotes from the beginning, from the tabling. Okay? There's no anything maybe for the positivity without a challenge. Anything which is of positive has a challenge, negative challenge.
Yeah.
If you see in the codification of this mighty bill, you understand the aims and ambitions. As any jurist might discuss and unleash, articulate all the issues in a positive way and a negative way. If you're to see the heart of this act, It is to save human life. Okay. One day, the former footballer of Manchester United and English, Andy Carroll, he said that human transplant, the organs of human transplant, they come to save life. He had to say that if it wasn't the kidney transportation to him, he would die by then. Okay? So back to the challenges. In our parliament, I will not always hesitate. Whenever a bill is tabled in parliament, more so when it is a government bill, there are always question marks. Okay, not only the government bill, but all the bills. Okay? There are issues of the parliamentary caucus. They always discuss. Okay? Every person comes up with an opinion. I cannot shy out to say that some opinions are elemented with intrigue. Some opinions, they are financial in a way that maybe someone is looking for what is he going to gain as an MP. It is not the board or the panel to character assassinate individuals here. But in our parliament, people are always looking for what to eat, okay, individually. Okay, if this bill passes, I personally, am going to get what I need.
So the aspect of corruption is something that could be a challenge.
I'm building the point of intrigue. Financially, economically, socially, okay? Is this bill going to maybe help my constituents? That's always the issue. Leave alone the issues of national importance, okay? There are some bills which are tabled in parliament and people do not understand or appreciate the principle of national importance as a republic, okay? Because if you see, I want to appreciate the Catholic Church and the United Nations. They put much pressure in the assentment and tabling of the bill in parliament. Because if you see the Catholic Church, most of the clergy, they used to visit the hospitals, okay? And the patients would report to the clergy about how the organs are being trafficked from them. It was recent in Canada. One lady visited a gentleman, okay? Issues of relationship. Just they got to know each other from social media and social handles. They had to visit the guy, okay? The guy had to transplant each and everything, all the organs inside. So those are some of the elements. The challenges, they cannot be an end discussion tonight. But the basic challenge that I can stick on, intrigue, okay? Are they always issues of national importance? When the bill is passed, it is now law. What is the implementation? Okay? How is it going to be implemented? Are the all parties, because we appreciate partisan politics in our country, are the all parties consenting to the practice and implementation of the bill being an act? Okay? How are the medical personnel appreciating? How about these people, the human trafficker, the organ traffickers? How are they appreciating the principles? Are they appreciating the codification of the act? Okay, because you're seeing we're having a council, because in the codification, there's a provision under section 6 providing for the council, and there are functions under section 13 for the council. What are the roles of the council? Are there some challenges? If they say if the act provides that there should be 7 members of the council, what are the qualifications? Should it be a lawyer? Should it be a healthy personnel? To me, it should be a health personnel. But you're going to find some of the challenges on the council. You're going to find someone who's not a medical personnel.
That's all right. Before we go into to detail of the council and break it all down, it's true that you bring out the challenge that possibly led to the delay of what we're going to experience that will lead to the delay of the implementation of this law. Thank you for clearly bringing that out. But before we break down this conversation further, we shall get to that. But thanks for that wonderful submission. Allow me to engage with Mr. Kadoketch. When you listen to the submission of Arthur, Abaho, and my friend here, Kwizera, you get the view. From Arthur's submission, he says the timing is not right. 2, the issue of the magnitude. We need to understand the magnitude or the issue at hand. You know, for people who study jurisprudence, they say laws are made to go ahead and solve social ills in societies. Now, from the history that we have seen that leads to this law, it approximately took us 2 decades to possibly have such a law. Now, in your own submission and opinion, what do you make of the submissions of Arthur and my brother Kwizera as you make your opening statement?
Thank you very much, moderator. According to this law, and if you read it very clearly, it was gazetted and has this purpose as similar to other laws. But what you have to appreciate in a very unfair way is that the laws are made, and it is the people who make the law who actually go astray to it. If you look at this law, it is looking at, among the 9 purposes, it is looking at it is equitable distribution of those transplanting organs. Like in case I'm transplanting, it should be at least fairing to all other. But you cannot convince me that the cost of transplanting, in case it's to be there, a person from Tororo, my local village, will be in position to account for it or to pay that money. So what we have to know that generally the government you are in and the law implementers are operating in a system of co-wife. Remember, you have to know that in Christian faith, it is really legal that you have to have 1 woman. And if you have 2 of them, ideally, there will be a quorum. And it is the system in Uganda that the law formulators, those people put into law, the parliamentarians, and the people to implement it, usually they work in a parallel line. You find that a law gets into board, it is signed from a bill into law, but really it doesn't operate the way it's supposed to operate. They go contrary to what the law calls for. And it is something that really has really affected all other laws, not actually this one only, all other laws. And panel called my friend here, who's a legal scholar, knows it very well, that that's the most supreme body that really governs that. And it is very clear that some of the issues in this law are clearly elaborated in some of the other different books and different guiding tools into the laws of Uganda. So I'm not convinced enough that this law is going to operate clearly. As I said, corruption is number 1, which is going to make it fail, and also personal gains from these different stakeholders basing on the law. And I'm not convinced still enough that organ transplant is going to be in favor of the local person. Not really.
Okay.
Based on my view.
All right. We shall get into the details and the nitty-gritties that this provides, because when you read the law, you actually find that it has the aspect of principles relating to justice, principles relating to beneficence, among others. We shall look into those ethical considerations when having this discussion. But thanks for your opening statement and for that submission. Let me have you, Mr. Edison. Generally, what do you make of this law as we go straight into discussing this? Just make a general overview before we get into the discussion tonight.
Thank you very much, Comrade Drake. In my opinion, this law is long overdue. The government was actually very late in, first of all, bringing it to Parliament and having it assented to. It should have been brought in way long before because of the need. But I also, before I go far, always Uganda is known for making very beautiful laws, very beautiful paperwork. But then implementation is another thing. I was actually going through the law. It has very good provisions, very, very beautiful provisions. There are few that we might have to question and that, but at least, you know, it has very good provision that I think if they are implemented, it can actually be of help to Ugandans. And looking at the history of organ trafficking and the challenges Ugandans have been facing in organ transplant and related cases, you can really see that the law will help if it is implemented right. We have Ugandans in their thousands who have been at risk of non-communicable diseases, most of which will push to the requirement for organ transplant. I was reading somewhere that in 2016 alone, 90,000 plus Ugandans died due to non-communicable disease-related cases.
It's actually 900,000.
Yes, yes. Now, most of these would have required organ transplants or tissue transplant in one way or another. So you can really see that there is a need for such a law. And then also globally, organs has been a very lucrative business for some people. People have been making a lot of money out of this. On the global market, some specific organs, kidneys, heart, liver go for thousands and thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars on the global market. And when you bring it back home, we have very many of our citizens who have been finding it so hard, especially those who can afford in getting the organ transplant. It has been a very expensive process. First of all, as a country, we have not been having hospitals, equipped hospitals that can be able to successfully do organ transplant. That means every Ugandan who wanted such had to be required to go abroad. And most of our people have been going to Kenya, to India, and to the UK, which is very expensive because you have to transport a donor, you have to transport the recipient, you have to book hotels and feeding and all those things. It has been a very, very expensive process. Ugandans have been putting on millions and millions of shillings to have this implemented, even those who would afford. But then on the other hand, you have majority of Ugandans, millions and millions, who can't afford the fees. And that then leads to the deaths of very many Ugandans who could not afford. Even the process itself of going abroad, process a passport and all the paperwork and all that thing and all that. So it has been a lot for Ugandans, and I think having this law in place is a step in the right direction if it's implemented right in safeguarding the health of Ugandans. And if its provisions are catered for and if it's implemented right, we can have our health improve and citizens could be better, especially those who can afford. Of course, we shall discuss issues of the costs later, but I think it's a step in the right direction.
All right, I'm going to stick with you as we come back this side and then begin the conversation. When you started your submission, you said this law has been long overdue. And there was need for us, or there was need for this country to have such a law. And you clearly bring out the aspect of the expensive nature of Ugandans accessing transplant, which has been the case. And the fact that we have been experiencing in the black market, people are buying and selling organs at very expensive rates and prices, of which the poor Ugandan, which I think are the majority, couldn't particularly have access to the transplant of these organs. But now this law is meant to solve the social ills. I earlier on said laws are made to solve the social ills. Now, I want you to help us. Does this law make it any easier for people to get transplant if at all they need it?
Does it make it any easier for people to get transplants? Yes or no? For those who can afford, yes. And for those who can't afford, no. We have a biggest majority of our population living below poverty line. And of course, for those you can't expect. Even when we have hospitals put in place here in the country, it's still not going to be as cheap for the average Ugandan. So maybe for a certain class of Ugandans who can be able to afford the fees, or maybe those who are privileged to have medical insurance, civil servants, people working with NGOs, for such a class of people, we can say it's going to make it easier for them. But for majority of Ugandans still, it is going to be a very long process. And for it to be effectively implemented, other sectors have to be looked into so that people are equipped. Inequalities will will increase rather. I was in one of the provisions is that the council that is mandated to implement and all that will have to work on a waiting list of recipients and potential donors. And just imagine if you have maybe a few kidneys in the country and the list is wrong, is very long, then I think it is the who is who that are going to benefit first. So I really think it's going to bring up issues of inequality in its implementation. But to a large extent, if the government can be critical in implementing it and setting up the right measures, we can have a difference, especially in regards to saving costs of going abroad for transplants.
All right, thank you. Let me come to you, Mr. Kadoketch. When you listen to the submission of my brother Edison, he says yes or no. But I'd love to disagree with his no, because when you read the law, you'd find that it provides financial assistance for those who cannot go ahead, and for those who cannot go ahead and afford to get a transplant. So when we see that this law has the spirit of the people, the aspect of justice, it has that embodiment, the ethical consideration of justice, that there's fairness for all, for those who can afford and for those who cannot afford. But also in this submission, you get the view that you see in Uganda, where we have a system that for you to get something done, you must know someone somewhere. Now that brings a question mark. Now my question to you is, we are still assessing the aspect of people accessing. Or does this law really make it any easier, considering the submissions of my brother Edison, who says the aspect of he who knows who will get the service? Does it then solve the problem?
I would love to disagree with this law solving the problems of the majority of Ugandans. As my colleague Edison said, statistics of the Ugandans below poverty line, which is around 8,000 on average now, are many.
Yeah.
And if you look at the health sector of this country, you have at least 2 specialized hospitals currently, and with Shirudu having capacity to handle a number of cases that is quite unique. But still, further, if you get there, is a government entity, government hospital, you will still find that you incur cost, which is quite close to what other person will incur. And there you find that the marginalized person, the poor person, will not access this service. Organ transplant is not a mere issue of discussion. It is quite expensive. Because if a person donates his organ or her organ, means that he's left with one to help him or her function. In case that person gets that a complication into that, the one he or she has been with, ideally is going to be triggered into death, or again looking for an organ to support his or her life, or being transplanted to him or her. What does it call for? We shouldn't hide or indoctrinate this argument in a sense of Ugandan context. Uganda as a country, we are known since history of who knows who and who does what for who. Those are the questions we should answer now. So Edison was hiding in a blanket to disagree with the fact that this law is going to cause more impact to the local community, the low-income earners, and they will continue dying because of the organ transplant in case of such complication. So let us agree that a person without a fair amount of money to get that donation will surely die, because he cannot access the organ he or she wants, regardless of what is now of the transport costs and that. Yes, that one might be subsidized.
On
yes.
that note, I still say, when you read the law, there's a provision that provides for the hospitals for those who cannot afford to go ahead and inform the health workers that they cannot afford, for them to be given financial assistance to get the transplant. Let's give a benefit of the doubt
Please,
that this will happen.
it is the same law that is very clear that the money we shall use to fund the council will come from Parliament and even Gazette is somewhere to borrow. We have to agree that Uganda as a country, we are servicing a very big debt. And among them is in the health sector. Yes, I don't want to disagree that the government will fail to borrow. Yes, but we have a number of other areas in which Uganda has not been funding. Malaria, Uganda has never paid any money for malaria since I was born.
So
Uganda has never paid any money for HIV. But you think...
Quick question then.
Yes.
Does this law then make it any easier for people who want to get a transplant?
The answer is no.
Why?
It will not make it easier because of the bureaucratic system and corruption infiltrated into the system.
All right.
Thank
you. Bureaucratic process and corruption in the system. Kwizera, the submissions of Mr. Edison and followed by the submissions of my brother, Bitter Salt, Kadoketch. You get the view that you see, this is a good law, Edison says. It's a very good law. It was long overdue for it to be passed. Followed by the conversation of my brother, Mr. Okumu, he says, you see, we cannot achieve the ideals of this law, reason being of the bureaucratic process and the corruption in our system. But then we find that the spirit of this law embodies the people. Dr. Ayume Charles, who was among the people who seconded this law, said it is a pro-people law.
Absolutely.
The law meant to help the people. Now, I earlier would say that there's a provision that provides for people who cannot afford to go ahead and request for financial assistance. Yeah? But also it is still with this same law that it also provides that since people do not know so much about organ transplant, among others, it tells the health workers to inform people about organ transplant in the various facilities that are going to be designated by the council. So do you think, or does our health sector, do the health workers have the integrity to go ahead and inform the people about this? Because lack of awareness has been an issue to do with organ transplant. But this law solves that social ill of lack of awareness. So do our medical personnel have the integrity to inform the people about the transplant?
Thank you very much. What does the law say? That is the question. I've not seen, ever since this law has been assented to on the 22nd day of March this year, I have not addressed my mind to issues of advertisement, okay? But as you know, even right now, what you're doing, because there are masses who are viewing, okay? They are getting the information. You have asked me about the medical personnel. For them, their role, it can be done indirectly or directly, okay? On their course of work. You see, statistically, in the whole world, 41 million people have been dying annually for the non-communicable diseases, the NCDs, okay? And even Uganda inclusive, okay? Now, when you get a patient of the same issue, of the organ transplant, you're a medical personnel, which information do you give him or her? Maybe he has come as a patient, you have diagnosed, because the law provides that there should be the diagnosis of the patient, understand the medical record, understand all issues upon his or her life. Understanding the blood group, because there are some circumstances where you find, Nasasira, I cannot maybe donate an organ to you medically. Maybe we have different blood group and other issues. You get it? It is high time, alongside the law, it is high time the Ministry of Health helping the council, they get measures, okay, of spreading the gospel inside the sector of health and outside the sector of health. We have the media space. The way they always advertise, now like the signing of the anti-homosexual bill being law in this year, it was all over, not only in Uganda, but all over Africa as a continent and the world. But what went wrong with the issue?
Sorry. They were sent to on the same day.
Okay. But I cannot say that that is a failure. It is not a failure. It can be worked upon. And it is not a blame game. This issue is not for only the medical personnel. Okay? In the society, we have roles to play as elites. Okay? Whether you're an engineer or not, whether you're a medical personnel or not, it is your role. So long as you get the information, go to up country, inform those people. Inform them, and they get to know, in case, maybe if there is a relative who has gotten the challenge, okay, the health issue about that requires the organ transplant. What are the procedures? Because even you see the law provides for the procedures. Okay, do they understand the procedures? In case they go in the hospital and they require an organ transplant, what is the diagnosis stages? Are they done in the appropriate manner by the medical personnel? Because you see, in the laws we studied the tortious liabilities. Even the medical personnel, they are tortious liable. Issues of concerning they don't come from Mars. They also do error. Okay. There are sometimes when you find maybe a medical personnel has done error when maybe doing some medical duty, and the patient doesn't know. Maybe doing that surgical transportation. Okay. And the patient doesn't know. And it takes time for him or her to know. Does he understand the procedures? Now, through the pro bono work, us, the legal practitioners, through the pro bono work, we understand these laws. We help the medical personnel. And we have to spread the gospel to the masses, and they get to understand. Maybe the point I can build from there, we should not leave it to the medical personnel only.
It's everyone's responsibility.
Everyone's responsibility.
Yes.
Okay? Go and spread the gospel, let every person understand. Get to know. Is there any offense committed? Okay? To what stage does maybe a recipient commit an offense? To what stage does a donor do the donation to recipient? You get it? Because even we are going to see that there's supposed to be a team, designated team, to do the process. And that team is headed by the coordinator. As I've told you, as I've mentioned prior, there should be the understanding, the critical understanding, the health of the person. Okay?
All right.
Between the donor and the recipient.
All right.
Whether he's fit to donate or not.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Kwizera. I'm interested in the aspect of it's everyone's responsibility to create awareness about this law. But then I'm going to come and ask you, Arthur. You know, this law covers a number of ethical considerations that we need to understand, need to dissect. Among of them is right to life, right to privacy. Yes, and among other ethical considerations like autonomy, this is about the right for one person to make their own decisions. Yeah, we look into things like beneficence. That is the right to help others. But I'm more particularly interested in the aspect of autonomy. Does this law provide for people to go, for individuals to have a right to make their own decisions regarding their bodies? That if today I, as Drake, I am having I'm having an organ issue, then you, as Arthur, you're possibly a possible donor to me. Does the law provide that if at all we match, I'm just supposed to come and get an organ from you, or there is supposed to be an aspect of the aspect of autonomy that you're supposed to make your own individual decision before going ahead to make the transplant?
Thank you very much, Onen. One thing I want us to understand from this law is the fact that the law is centered more on curbing trafficking of human organs than actually benefiting the health people that actually need the organs, or the people that are in dire health conditions. So you'll find the law is focused more on regulations and stipulations on how to mitigate issues of organ trafficking and taking organs without consent than actually dealing with the issue at hand of I need an organ, how do I get it, where do I get it? Edison talks about the waiting list. The waiting list is very evident throughout the entire law. And the question that rises, the question I've been asking myself, how does this waiting list operate? If I need an organ and I have someone who can give it to me, do I go on the waiting list and wait for when it's my turn to receive this organ? Or do I wait for whose organ is on the list that I can now get? You see, the basic knowledge I know is that this happens in the States. They have a waiting list of people who are maybe about to die and decide to give their organs. These organs go on a waiting list. And the earlier you apply for the organ, the earlier you get it. There is no skipping lines. But the question our law does not address is what Douglas has just asked. If I have my organ and I want to donate it, do I go through the same process? Because it does not stipulate of if I have a match, what do we do in regards to that? But then allow me also talk about that in the aspect of equity and equality. See, the justice system in this country, it's very impossible for you to achieve both aspects in a sector, in an economy, or in society. Where there is one, you will not achieve the other. What the government does, puts there the schools. Putting there the schools, it's now up to you to take your children in those schools. Schools are not meeting the quality, take them to higher schools. So this is what this law is basically bringing on board. What I'm saying is that the government is making this law put the organs available. So whether you have the capacity to access these organs, whether you have the capability to access these organs, the issue of equality is not the issue. Because before, we've been seeing people not being able to access these organs because they do not actually know that they exist, or people do not have platforms on which to donate these particular organs. But now what the government is doing is put in place systems that are actually creating awareness that if you want a liver, there is a liver available. If they want a kidney, there's a kidney available. And with the financial assistance Douglas is talking about, of course, you can access them. And if you do not have the financial capacity, you may not. That brings me to one thing in terms of equity, equality, and justice. For us to achieve a fair system, for us to achieve a fair, equitable distribution of these organs, we need to understand the needs. Who needs these organs? Who needs this transplant? Who needs this transplantation more? Address it along those lines. You'll be able to answer that question.
But doesn't the law address that, because it provides a matching system that they match you a donor and a recipient that is eligible to give you that particular organ that you're looking for?
The law is addressing that. That aspect of
justice
is being served. There's a potential match I can get, but the law is not clearly showing us the how aspect. The equity part is what the law addresses, but the equality. Douglas, I want you to understand the situation that you're talking about of the law providing for facilitation of whoever wants a transplant. We've been struggling to raise money for people to go to India. You find you're making car drives, car washes, runs to facilitate people to go to India and actually have these transplants. For one individual, you're raising 500 million, raising 300 million for both the donor, the transportation costs, the flight tickets. So you want to tell me that this law is going to be able to facilitate for 4 people requiring transplants around the same time to both fly out, come back with the transplant already done? So that is where the question of equality now comes into place. We are seeing me being able to locate a match. The law is providing for that sense of sort of equity. Equality and fairness in the distribution is what is still lacking to ensure.
But that same law still provides for, there's an allocation process. Yeah, it also provides for the process of organ donation. So if you first look at the process of organ donation, you're going to look into the donor registration, the appropriate consent, the brain death determination, among others. Doesn't that address your concern of the how?
It addresses the concern of the how on the equity part. If I meet all those and I do not have the capacity of financial, you see the financial assistance you talk about, Douglas, use the analogy I've given you. If we are taking months to contribute 500 million for one person, is the government going to be able to take 4 people? Because if you're taking 4 people and each is 500 million, how much is that? 2 billion Ugandan shillings to take 4 people who do not have financial capacity to make this transplant. Looking at the budget statistics themselves, 2 billion is an allocation to a sector in this economy. So we do not have capacity yet to ensure equality. What you're doing is just providing the assistance that they provide, but realistically speaking, the law does not actually show us how this can be incorporated into our system.
All right, as I've had it there, the submissions by my colleagues on this panel, very interesting. The fact is, there is a general agreement that this law is a good one. But then the question still remains that this law being a good one, does it actually go ahead and carry out the implementation process that sees that every Ugandan who needs this transplant or card to them actually receives the service? Now, that's a question that we are yet to understand, because the young men on the panel seem to agree that Uganda is a system, as I quote from one of the panelists, that has a very bureaucratic process, is corrupt, and doesn't have the capacity to go and that hold people at the helm of their hearts. Stay with us as we come back to discuss the other half of the conversation, which seems to be quite contested and interesting. Thank you.
Digital rights are those human rights and legal rights that allow individuals to access, use, create and publish digital media, or to access and use computers, other electronic devices and telecommunication networks. Digital rights include a right to freedom of expression, information and communication through technology, a right to privacy and data protection, a right to credit for personal works, a right to universal and equal digital access, a right to identity, a right to anonymity, a right to be forgotten, and a right for protection of minors, among others. The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive social, economic, and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
Hello, our dear esteemed viewers. Thank you and welcome back from that short break. Right before we went into the break, we're having a very wonderful conversation here with my brother Arthur and my panelists. And the issue was on the aspect of the ethical considerations that this law captures. And particularly, we're interested on the aspect of autonomy. And Arthur brings out a very interesting aspect to tonight's conversation. Now, I want to pass the ball to my brother Abdul Kiyingi, who has joined us in this segment of the show. When the law provides that, people have the autonomy over their body, that the right to make their own choices. And this law provides for the aspect of consent, that if you're a recipient, you are supposed to first consent before you make a donation. But also there are other aspects that I want us to traverse, because Arthur looked at ethical considerations relating to justice, but he has question marks on the aspect of how exactly this is going to be done and achieved. But I want you now to focus on the area of beneficence. Beneficence is this states that we have the moral obligation to help others. And we find that this law, or the spirit of beneficence, is reflected, which encourages people to donate organs. Now, do you think as a country, and we have seen similar laws, or we have seen laws before, and if Ugandans are people who love helping, people help others, people just genuinely help. You see, when there are issues to do with drives, people support.
Oh, yes.
But then, with this law providing that people should go ahead and donate organs, if these organs are donated, will it reach the right people? Because Arthur's concern, the process of getting this, will it reach the right people?
Okay, thank you so much, Drake.
Yeah.
And the human organ donation and transplant law is premised on a history, and in Uganda today, we can record that we have had so many conversations when it comes to illicit human organ trafficking and trade. Now, it is your averment that in Uganda, people are really very hospitable when it comes to sharing and
now, of course, giving in their organs to others in as far as help is concerned.
Yeah.
But this law comes at a time when we need it the most. There has been allegations, and for your own information, these allegations have been targeting majority of the labor export companies. And such allegations include that they recruit these young men and women under the umbrella of taking them outside to work. But of course, behind the scenes, they intend that once they cross the borders and they reach overseas, the main intention is to take or even transplant those organs illicitly. I will say consent is one of the principles that this law puts onto table. Consent can be categorized in as far as I am informed about this new law, can be categorized into 3 aspects. The first is adult consent, and when it comes to who is an adult in as far as this law is concerned, the interpretation section will provide to us who an adult is, and literally any person of 18 years and above, in as far as this law is concerned, can donate. The second category when it comes to consent is a child. Now, this law prohibits a child from donating any of his or her organ. However, there are instances where we have those children that we call the brain dead children. I think that is the context in which they are categorizing such children. Those children literally whose brain does not function. And the law, I want to remind you, the law does not look at the functioning of the brain. The law looks at the functioning of the mind. And what I mean by this, if a child's brain is dead, that means we can now go to who the law calls the close relation. And those literally are the parents, brothers, sisters, and we can obtain consent from those, and we can, of course, do the transplantation of such organs to other children, which can be helpful to us. Now, there is a third category of the non-living persons. Now, how do we obtain consent from the deceased persons? We only obtain consent from the deceased persons by way of approaching the family of the deceased. And still, this is what we call the close relation and members of the family. It may be a father to the deceased. It may be a mother, brother, sister, wife. So when it comes to consent, this law is very important because previously we could not have such kind of trade when there is an understanding. But the law has put it for us that since it is about donation, before a transplant is done, we look at the aspect of donation, not in as far as the commercial perspective, but donate willingly and with the consent that is required freely. Now that means if anybody in this context does not give in their consent, nobody has a right to extract or even transplant such organs from him to another person. I would also wish to answer your question in the second bit of my submission, that this law has a short title, and I would wish to inform the viewers. And from its short title, it's my duty as a lawyer to inform you that it is called the Human Organ Donation and Transplantation Law, whereby we literally look at the correlationship between the donation and transplantation. Where there has not been a donation, we cannot transplant. And the donation has its premise on the principle of consent. That means there is a relationship. That means we cannot have a transplantation where we don't have. They have operationalized this law within itself. I will state it to my fellow panelists. They have stated that there is the establishment of the Uganda Organ and Transplantation Council. Now, this council has a mandate, just like any other. I will give an example. We have what we call the Uganda Law Council, which of course operationalizes much of the work of the legal profession. Now, when it comes to the health perspective, they have established, which was not there before, and we must commend Parliament for that. Because once this council has been put into place and established, just like the president assented, and the bill is yet to be operationalized, the council will have the following kind of roles. The first that we may be grappling with is the issue of granting licenses and certificates to each and every health center that shall have the responsibility of doing the role of transplantation. The council still shall have the obligation to have the register of each and every person who comes willingly to donate. You know, recently we had the Uganda Blood Transmission Council, and I think it is in every village that we have recorded so many blood donations. Now, just like blood donation has been, we can now have what we call human organ donation or donators. Now, a donator, we can interpret who a donator is in as far as the Act is concerned. I think particularly Section 3 of the Act. We can still interpret those organs that can be donated still referring to the Act, and amongst which include, I think, I must change this particularly, Section 2. We can look at those organs, for example, organs like hair. I do not know whether we are cognizant of the fact that hair is also one of the organs that can be donated, but it is part. We can donate what we call the cornea, and by cornea I mean the first lens or level of the eye. For example, you have the cornea. I don't know whether I can practically show you, but of course I know people understand when I talk about cornea. They can transplant the cornea from one's eye to another, but that shall come as a result of you going for such a donation. They can donate, many people know about only, I think, kidneys and livers and what. But there are so many as the Act provides.
Almost like 18.
It is the duty of the council to
create that awareness.
Of course, to do all that mandate.
All right. You have explicitly brought out the ethical considerations. You capture the aspect of autonomy. You capture the aspect of beneficence. You capture the aspect of non-maleficence. Non-maleficence, I mean, this refers that we do not have the right to harm others in your submission. You also capture the ethical consideration of justice, but also not forgetting, you bring out the aspect of right to life, and you balance. You go ahead and balance balance these principles and say the issue of voluntary and consent is very important when it comes to donation and transplantation. Thank you. But also in your submission, you bring out the roles of this organ called the Uganda Organ and Transplant Council. Now, my question goes to my brother, Okumu. When you listen to the submission of council, you get the view that we have, they establish this Uganda Organ and Transplant and Transplant Council to go ahead and implement the act, right? The law. Now, help us unpack, how does it ensure that the law is being enforced? How will this council go ahead and ensure that the law is enforced and implemented as regards to this particular act that is law?
Thank you very much for this session.
Yeah.
And really, I'm looking at the insight of unpacking this law by the council that is currently operating to manage I think the dissemination and the rest. If I speak on the perspective of a volunteer, I've been a long time volunteer with Uganda Red Cross Society, where I've engaged in blood donation activities and recruitment. So I think the first thing they have to do is to create a sense of awareness. The truth must be told that this law is not known by the majority of Ugandans. Actually, it was passed at the time when they passed another impinging law according to African tradition, that really African and Ugandans really look further more to seek more attention in the other law, leaving this major law. So the council has a serious work to be done, and they should really engage in different societies, society management, the local leaders, so that they bring the clear picture of this law. And actually, they should enrich the community with the really fact about the law. But still, on the backside of it, it is quite a hard thing. And majorly, it is Uganda as a country is going to face a challenge on the side of the donors, because getting to try to explain to a local person that you donate your kidney to to help someone, really they will say that what if even the blood, we donated blood, and Uganda Blood Bank, which actually Mengo and Nakasero, majorly for Central Uganda and for Eastern is Bali, you find that there's some blood deficits. There's no blood, but we donate every year. And actually daily, but you find that on regional cases, the blood is not there. So if you look at the context of the community, I'm not talking at the perspective of the local community there, getting into adopting this law to be part of them, in the sense of communism and socialism, it is going to be quite a hard thing. And National Council will, the council that is mandatory into this activity are going to face a really quite a hard task to answer a few questions that will raise from the community.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you. From Mr. Okumu's submission, we get the view that the council is charged with quite a number of responsibilities, and which include overseeing the implementation of the human organ donation and transplant law. They go ahead and have to provide guidance and expertise on organ donation. They have to go ahead and register and accredit organ donation and transportation centers, establishing a system for matching donors, ensuring that the law is enforced, and lastly, raising awareness. And in this raising awareness, they have to go ahead and organize workshops, provide educational materials, among others. Now, with this responsibility that is placed on the council, seems to be quite enormous and big, my brother Edison. And from Okumu's submission, you get the view that he juxtaposes that we have the blood bank, that we usually, almost on a daily basis, make donations of blood, but then still face the aspect of scarcity of blood in health facilities. Now, will this law receive the same, or will it receive the hospitality that it's supposed to be received with? Because in your earlier submission, you said this law was long overdue and there was need for us to have this law. The council has a responsibility to educate the masses. And the social ill this law is trying to address is organ trafficking, which is a challenge. Now, if we have an issue, a challenge relating to raising awareness, don't you think the council has so much responsibility at their hand vis-a-vis people willingly also wanting to give their organs?
Thank you very much, Drake. Actually, not only the council having a lot of work to do according to the provisions of the law, but also this law is an extra burden on the already overwhelmed health sector in the country. We've been having a health sector whereby it has been hard for us to implement what is already in place and ensuring that the basic health of Ugandans is taken care of. And now we are bringing on board something more weighty. I really think it's going to be an extra burden. You have Ugandans who even can't afford basic health. Maybe someone needs to go to an X-ray, a CT scan, or maybe an ultrasound machine. And most of our Ugandans can't afford this because some of these machines are not at our general hospital at the districts, at our health centers 4 in the counties, or our health center 3 at the sub-county level.
Yes.
You find that if Ugandans want to access some of these machines that will check their internal organs and all that, they will have to go to private facilities, which is a little bit costly to the life of the average Ugandan. And in most cases, others maybe have been dying not knowing that they need transplants. Maybe they need to be screened if they have a kidney issue, but they can't go to a machine. They can't access a machine which can be able to do that for them. So I really think it's going to be an extra burden on the health sector in general. And also the council itself. It's just going to be a 9-member committee. And they have all this plethora of things to put into place. It's going to be a little bit burdensome for them. But of course, they are not going to be working alone. They will be coordinating generally with the Ministry of Health and being supervised directly by the Minister of Health. There is a lot for them to do, and especially in ensuring public-private partnerships. Because according to the law, the government has to work on equipping the national referral first, Mulago. And then later the government can look into equipping other national hospitals and other maybe regional referral hospitals to offer services of organ transplant and donation and whatever is related in that regard. So private-public partnership will help a lot, especially in calling the private sector on board, private players who can be able to equip their hospitals to meet the standards. So that maybe they can reduce the burden from the government. But also you have instances where the trust of the masses in government has gone down over time. So the government will have to do a lot of work, and the council will have to do a lot of work in convincing the masses on the benefits of this law. Society is having very many issues tainted around organ transplant. People think it's witchcraft, it's evil. There are some religions which, for example, don't even allow blood transfusion or even organ transplant. So the government will have to do a lot, and the council will have to do a lot in sensitizing the masses, and not just the workshops in air-conditioned conference halls in Kampala or in major towns, but going to the grassroots, talking to the masses on radio stations across the country, and reaching the people who are supposed to benefit from these services. So it's really a lot on them, and I hope they will be able to do what they are mandated to do. It will raise other issues, of course, corruption, implementation, and all that. We hope that they do what they are supposed to do. The law itself may be a step in the right direction, but if the council can't open their eyes wide and exercise the transparency and the justice and the truthfulness that is being called for in the law, if that can't be exercised, then it's not going to achieve its mandate.
Let's hope the law goes ahead and achieves its mandate. Because from the submission of my brother Okumu earlier on in the first segment, he was of the view that there's a lot of bureaucracy and corruption.
Oh, yes.
And he said that when we are raising awareness, it shouldn't be in air-conditioned conference halls, but rather in the grassroots. Let's see what happens. It's just a few months old, and we're waiting to see the impact. Arthur, from the submissions of my brother Edison, you get the view, particularly 2 challenges that he raises: the aspect of lack of infrastructure to help go ahead and implement the transplant and the donations, but also you get the view of lack of awareness among the masses about donation and transplant of organs. Are there other possible challenges that could possibly affect this donation and transplant law in Uganda?
Thank you very much, Drake. To build on what Edison had said, without trust, the system cannot work as intended. For a system to work as intended, for the benefits to be obtained as intended, there should be trust. Trust in that the system will be ethical, transparent, just, and the system can easily be held accountable. What this law is going to do is, one, when a legal thing is passed, when you pass a legal framework, the illegalities also increase. So we are going to see the black market for these organs actually expand. We're going to see very many people now trying to use the black market and use other angles to extract these organs, trying to dodge the legal consequences that the law is actually putting on them. Now the whole black market issue is now going to bring into the question of trust. One, in terms of infrastructure. If I am the donor and the recipient of the kidney is also available, why do I also need to go with the recipient abroad to effect this transaction if we cannot have the doctors or the surgeons available at the moment, if we don't have the infrastructure? Can't we have mechanisms of, I see a lot talking about something they call a container. Can't we have the organ put in a container so the organ goes with the recipient rather than us having all these costs imposed on us? So we should have a system that is going to focus on development of infrastructure, not only in terms of how we relate with how the organs are being distributed, but with how effective that the implementation of the transplant is going to be. One, the surgeons, the waiting rooms, the technologies that are required, the sensitization and awareness. See, Drake, if all these things are worked on, we're going to have the trust that the people need. Right now, they think it's alien, even when someone has an issue with a kidney. For example, they talk about the health centers we go to. Health Center 3, Health Center 4. Those health centers do not have the capacity to ensure that you are actually diagnosed with kidney failure and you need a kidney transplant. What this is going to need you to do is that you will have to go to a more advanced hospital, more advanced health facility, private. Possibly private, for you to actually determine that you need a transplant. So the system is not going to be efficient in the sense that even the people themselves are not going to be aware that I'm actually diagnosed with kidney failure and I need a kidney transplant. It is going to first fail at the diagnosing stage, where at the diagnosing stage itself, people are not aware. So for a system to be efficient, for a system to be fully credible, we need to work from the grassroots. Make sure that these health facilities have the ability to refer, that these individuals have the ability of accessing those referrals. When they're in those referrals, they have the ability to accurately diagnose, because the thing with health systems is that there is a large gap of information asymmetry between what is actually happening and the knowledge that the doctors and the patients have. So unless that gap is bridged and we have that this information disseminated equally, we are still going to see a problem of trust. So for trust to be built, for trust to be restored into the masses, we need to address these various issues that are concerning the entire transplant and how the entire law is going to be implemented. Because like one of the panelists said, on paper it's very good, it's a very beautiful law on paper, but when you go into the nitty-gritties of how this law is going to address the challenges of the local masses, we're going to face problems in that angle. So addressing the issues of the black market, addressing the issues of who is genuinely donating the various organs, addressing issues of infrastructure, issues of doctors, the issues of surgeons and operating rooms. Unless we address these issues, the trust is not going to be established and the law is still going to be impractical in this country.
Thank you. Arthur highlights the issue of trust. We don't trust the system, yeah? We don't trust the system, that the system is capable of doing the work they're supposed to do, which means if we don't trust the system, we also barely trust the medical practitioners. As we wind up this conversation, I would like to ask Council Abdul. You get the challenge to do with organ trafficking, to do with lack of infrastructure, to relate with lack of awareness. But don't you think we also have a cultural and a religious belief that people have that possibly would affect the implementation of this law?
Okay, thank you so much once again, Drake. I was interested in one of fellow presenter Arthur's submission when he talked about the aspect of implementation. Shortly, in just half a minute, I will have to tell him that before a law is passed and assented to by the president, there is a technical process of which there is what we call the acquisition of certificate of compliance, whether it is complying with the laws. You must show the history, you must show the reasons, challenges, and all that. And of course, you must show the implementation and financial constraint plan of how this law shall constrain our finance. As a state, implementation is not going to be a problem. That's why Dr. Ayumi stated that this is a poor man's what? Poor man's law. I'll get back to your question when it comes to culture and religious of course, allegations here and there. From the report of the Uganda Blood Transmission Council, they stated that Indians, as part of this nation, because it is, I think it is of recent that they consider them to be a tribe now of this nation. They stated that we are supportive of the law, but given our background, our cultural beliefs, our religious sentiments, we cannot accept a heart from Kiyingi Abdul to be transplanted to Patel Singh. That is not how we believe. So they believe that the notion of ethnicity is so paramount when we talk about donation and transplantation. So they don't believe, and they were of the view that if we are supportive of this law, it must be operationalized in the angles of, for example, respecting the ethnic lines. Now, we can also appreciate that there is also another faith, those that we call the Jehovah Witness.
Oh yes.
They also have another belief, and I think they also believe that it is okay to have such transplantation. But I think they are kind of there is a way they perceive. I don't know whether any of you has heard about their view, but they
don't allow blood transfusion and any organ transplant donation.
But there is a way in which, of course, from one of the interviews that I saw from one of their leaders, he stated that it is okay because they don't have power not to okay any law that has been passed by Parliament. So they must be okay with it because it is a law that has been passed by a mandated body. But in line with their beliefs, they believe for us, you cannot start talking about issues of transplanting a kidney from Kiyingi to a Wandrek and vice versa. I will come to my faith now, Islam. When it comes to Islam, the issue of I will inform you that Quran Surah Al-Baqarah 2 verse 286 provides that Allah does not burden a soul with more than it can bear. If someone can lose a kidney and stay alive to save a life, now that is the true interpretation and the liberal interpretation of Islam. So there are different beliefs and different ideologies from different corners, given our respective different backgrounds, that some are opposite of this, while others are supportive of this practice. But I want to inform the viewers today that you must be grateful of the work done by the Parliament, because this law is one of the laws, unlike what we've been hearing from the copyright and the neighboring rights law or act, where people are saying that we have had this law ever since, I think, 2016 and what, but it has not been operationalized, we are not benefiting and all that. Do not start categorizing the human organ donation and transplantation law in the category of the copyright laws. This is so pertinent that it touches the right to life, the right to health, those fundamental and guaranteed rights under Chapter 4. So it is important that we respect the fact that given that there are those opposite forces of this law, it is here to stay and we must support it. Because if we do not, we are going to be supporting the illicit, illegal trafficking of the human organs, which is in place. There was also another school of thought I wish to inform the public about. That since this law has been passed, assented to by the president, now about to become law, because the law doesn't become law because it has been assented to by president. No. I wish to inform the public that that is not how laws become law. Once the president assents to any law, it just becomes a law passed by parliament and assented to by president. It only becomes law in force, and it commences when it has been gazetted into the public gazette. Now, once this law has been gazetted and it has come in, it has come into place, first and foremost, we must respect the fact that it is going to play an important role and a significant part. First and foremost, we are going to start now downplaying the plans, the plots, and all the projects the illicit commercial dealers in human organs have been doing. Then the other aspect, it is about helping the poor person. You can now, I heard one of my colleagues stating that how is the poor person going to be helped? You can access these donated organs, given the equity of the supply of these organs, in those gazetted health facilities like we shall gazette. It is a new law. One stated that it is not even 6 months old. It is just a few months old.
We should give it a benefit of doubt.
Yes. So if at all the council performs its duty so well, licenses those health facilities that are going to be doing this job, of course they get donors, they supply these donated organs to the different, of course, health centers. It is going to be helpful to the poor person, because we have been losing obscene amounts of money, just like Arthur stated, 100 million, 300, car wash for this one. And we are no longer going to see that. The only requirement that you need is, are you having a non-communicable disease? Which kind of disease is that? Have you been diagnosed of the same?
Okay.
Go to the hospital. Of course, you will be put to the list of, I think they call them the recipients. You will be put to the waiting list of such recipients awaiting, without any penny, because I'm not seeing any penny within the law. But I'm seeing a lot of figures being thrown here and there, a lot of money. The poor person will not benefit. He will benefit, and this is how the law works. Please agree with me. Agree with me.
I am seeing the gentlemen on the panel shaking their heads. But allow me hold you there. Allow me hold you there. Okay. And as we wind this up, Mr. Okumu, you are some of the people are shaking your head. Maybe in disagreement on what council said. You can disagree and then tell us, what is the future of organ donation and transplant in Uganda?
I would start answering that question by making a submission on opposite side to my colleague. It is not yet law as is stated, and we have laws which has been operating in this country before. And me and you, or at least elite, we know that these laws all have been in practice and have been seeing it operating. But truthfully, they have not been taking the right line or channel of its implementation. Yeah, he's trying to convince the media that it will be implemented the right way. Truthfully must be told that Ugandan laws, I'm speaking on the line, I'm not a legal scholar like him.
Let's maybe give it a benefit of that.
Yes, but in the legal system of this country, the judiciary are trying to create a very nice paperwork, as one of the colleagues said. But it is the rightful implementation is getting to a deteriorating line of it. More so in the health sector, where I belong, actually. I'm a biostatistician.
But
I understand.
can we agree that the spirit of the law is pro people?
Yes, the spirit of the law is pro people. We understand that. But we also have to agree that it has never worked. All the laws actually are pro. All the laws.
I would like to disagree with that.
No. Most of these laws are pro.
Drake, not until he's diagnosed with a non-communicable disease. Now that he doesn't have a million, he will understand that it is for the poor.
No, really. Just in a summary, council, we have to agree that the law is currently not in operationalization form, but it is soon to commence. You get it? So this way you're going to find now the
The usual
criminal activities.
The usual Ugandan challenge.
The usual Ugandan challenge of the 21st century, actually.
Right.
Uganda was much more better and very okay in the early 60s. But currently, I don't really believe that
It's fine.
this law will be channeled and will do the right work as it is on the paperwork. That one I disagree.
All right. Edison.
Though with some benefit of doubt.
All right. You also were among the people who were shaking your head in disagreement to the submission of counsel. Did you?
Partially.
Partially. Maybe in disagreement to what he has said, you can sum that up and then tell us the future of the donation and transplant law.
Thank you, Drake. Let me say this before I forget it. The law protects those within the country, but we have been having instances of organ trafficking that happen outside the country. Organs of Ugandans are trafficked when they have gone out of the country, and I don't think the law will protect them once they are out there. We have a few of our Ugandans who go for work outside in the Arab world and all that, and they have been affected. I am not sure if the law will protect them, that side. And then also locally, the main issue will be with implementation. If the government makes it a free process, I don't know how best they are going to do it, to make it free like the way blood has been. But assuming it is free, then you're going to have instances of bribery coming up. Because trust me, the organs are going to be few compared to the need of the people that want the organs. So I am seeing the same way our health practitioners, some of them, have been taking bribes just to give a few medication and basics in the health sector. How about something of a matter of life and death? I am seeing them making a lot of money out of it as well. There are 2 kidneys and there are over 5 who want it. It will go to the highest bidder. And then generally the future of the law. Like I said earlier, and I still maintain that it's a step in the right direction. But that will be if the government does their best to ensure that the provisions of the law are actually implemented. Public-private partnerships, like I said earlier, will help a lot. Because we must admit our health sector, the national health sector provided by the government, is not enough. It's going to be overwhelmed in as far as providing this. So the private sector should be brought in to supplement the government hospitals in providing this. And maybe generally on a larger scale, the government can look into a national insurance policy to make it easy for everyone, so that every Ugandan can be able to benefit. Having all Ugandans, at least a good percentage, subscribing for health insurance provided by the government. Right. And then also
maybe as you summarize, yes, and give your parting shots.
And then also mainly sensitization, because people don't know about the law, they have to be informed. People, when we talk about organ transplant, we are only talking about the kidney, the heart, and the liver, those common ones. But the law actually provides for very many of them. We say they are way over 10. So there has to be a lot of sensitization. And then basically the people who are going to be mandated implementing this law, they have to be true to Ugandans and accountable to Ugandans and do that which they have been mandated to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Arthur, you are among the people who shook your head in disagreement to what counsel said. You can please go ahead and make you disagree with what he said and give us your parting shots. Then we shall have my brother Okumu give your parting shots and counsel will respond and then give his parting shots and close. Fine? Arthur.
I'm going to be as brief as possible.
Yeah.
Counsel actually dodges the analogy I bring in place. I tell you that health centers are going to be the ones to diagnose these people. And health centers do not have that capacity, and they're not going to find out that you actually need a kidney transplant, and the failure is going to be from the word go. Council wants us to only look at the law when it is implemented. He does not want us to poke loopholes until the implementation is done. He is waiting for the law to first be passed, then that is when we can question it. So something like Council Edison talks about of...
Teacher Edison.
Yeah, Teacher Edison, rather. Yes. What he talks about of the law not affecting people who go abroad. Should we wait for the law to be implemented so that we can talk about, okay, people going abroad are not actually now being... So the implementation assumption that he has is actually derailing us from the entire conversation of this evening. I believe that for us to understand this matter in depth is to look the long term. You see, what makes most of the work remain on paperwork is this kind of mindset. Limited cognitive abilities of our minds to think that we can only remain on before the law passes, or when the law is passed, or it has not yet been passed, let us give it a benefit of doubt. But if we are pointing out such similar loopholes, and you still have the same kind of mindset, we are bound to face the same challenges.
Thank you, Arthur. Okumu.
Yes, I want to say, for Uganda to succeed, basically in this law, what we have to look at is, I think, restructuring the entire system of the health sector. Uganda as a country doesn't have the capacity to hold or to have these health facilities, do diagnosation for these people to get into maybe a need of kidney transplant. Very few regional hospitals have capacity to do that. And I think health center force. But from health center 3 is surely Uganda has to get into what called the structure of the health sector for this all to be really important or to be in line. And lastly, bureaucratic system, the long frustrating procedures of accessing this should be eliminated. And the most important is corruption.
To fight it. Thank you. Council, kindly make your submission very brief and give us a parting shots because we're out of time.
Okay. On the issue of those that are going to of course, transport these organs outside the country and all that, I want to inform Teacher Edison that we have laws that deal with the extradition of criminals. We call that the Extradition Act. And once you make such crimes, just like those that are provided for within this law, you will be extradited, brought back to Uganda, and you will be charged of this.
But it has been happening.
Unless if it is a political offense, but if it is an offense provided for under here, once you recognize that there is someone who has done that, please make report and leave that to the authorities.
Can I ask?
Yes.
Which political party do you align yourself with?
Clearly.
It's okay.
Clearly.
It's fine. We can conclude.
Now we have the issue of bidding. That when there is 5 bidders, we have only 2 kidneys, or we have 2 sets of hair. One wants hair, another one wants. So what will we do for those people? Of course, equity will have to come into place. And let us not preempt what Parliament has put for us on table. Let us give it a try. Let's be supportive. You know, very many Ugandans have now started to adopt to this kind of a syndrome whereby something comes up and they start hitting it hard before it even starts to give flowers. Please let us give it a shot. But of course, in my conclusion, I would wish to talk about 2 issues that I think they are so pertinent as I close up. One are the offences that are provided for and the penalties from the Act, and these are offences I think Teacher Edison is interested into, and one of them is once you're caught without a license and you're extracting or harvesting organs from different personnel, even if those persons are adults and have given you consent, but without a license of the council, you will have to pay those huge amounts of money. I think the range starts from around 1,000, 10,000
currency points.
Various other currency
And by
points.
the way, each currency point
It's
costs
20,000.
20,000. So we can do the math.
Yes, they will interpret the currency points from the schedule to the Act. Now, the second and the last is that we cannot discuss human organ donation and transplantation law without talking about the recent landmark case of the Ekweremadu case of Nigeria. You know, the semblance of the law that we are having here is the same law that is in Nigeria. They call it the National Health Act. It restrains and limits anybody from harvesting, dealing commercially in human organ trafficking and all those tendencies. Here comes a gentleman who is called Ekweremadu, who was recently a vice president in one of the states in Nigeria. Gets a gentleman from the streets, that is Lagos, with the wife, takes him to UK, of course, with the engagements. And this is particularly to trade and sell. This law, just like from Nigeria, limits any kind of trade. Even if you're being promised 50,000 and you're ready to give consent, once they detect that there is any kind of payment, this case provides to us that you will be gotten as a criminal, and for that particular offense, I think they gave him, on conviction, they gave him 9 years. The doctor who did the harvesting was given 10 years. The wife with whom the plot was done was given 9 years. And the daughter, because it was the daughter that they wanted to have a transplantation to, he was doing a master's in film in California. So that means that since we have had such cases, these are dependable precedents that Ugandans can learn from, that if in Nigeria it has worked, now that we have also adopted this, we have made the law, passed it, it is now law, it will be helpful because we have stories to learn from. Okay. It is only the fool that doesn't learn, and Ugandans will learn from that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been a very wonderful discussion this afternoon, and as I've heard it from this wonderful panel that has joined me today to discuss making sense of the human organ donation and transplantation law in Uganda, they've actually made quite an impressive deliberation to tonight's conversation. Thank you very much to Arthur Abaho, Mr. Kwizera Emmanuel, Mr. Kiyingi Abdul, Mr. Okumu, and then Mr. Edison. Thank you very much for taking time to join me in tonight's conversation.
You're welcome.
And it has been very, very interesting and very mind-blowing to me. And we want to say thank you once again. And to Center for Constitutional Governance and Civic Space TV, thank you for always giving young people the platform to air their views and discuss such pertinent issues that are very important to us and the society at large. And lastly, to the technical crew, Rashid and the team, thank you for always making time to have the show aired on time. And you, the viewers, thank you very much. And remember to subscribe and watch. Have a good afternoon. Cheers.